as the special session approaches and as we try to preserve Indiana's strong, relatively strong fiscal position, here are some facts that I think the public and those of you who are the public ought to know. So I'll just be really quick with this and take your questions. As we were trying to get the legislature to understand just a month ago, just as in every state in America, revenues have been dropping. This is month over month. Actually, you see Indiana held up reasonably well into the fall, but then sharply down, so November and every month since way below the previous year. And culminating in an unprecedented 22% year-on-year reduction in April, which is the biggest revenue month. And so this isn't pleasant, but it's reality, and we have to deal with it. And unfortunately, a month ago, the legislature was working with a revenue forecast that was just wildly at odds with the reality we knew. We kept saying, look, this isn't something to debate. This is what we're taking in. It looks much below the forecast you're dealing with. Just to illustrate, the forecast they were trying to write a budget to said April would be here and May would be here. April, they missed April alone by $255 million. And when you rolled it all up, the budget that they were writing to was off by well over $1 billion. And that's why I couldn't sign it. And that's why we had to have a special session. And this is something you should know going forward. The drop in revenue has been so significant that even presuming recovery, the new forecast that came out this week, and therefore some growth between the year we're just about to end, the year 2 years from now. Just notice that 2 years from now, the state will take in less money than it did 2 years ago. That's pretty sobering, but what it means is we got to be extraordinarily cautious about our spending. We got to avoid this. This is the budget that they were working on a month ago. I could not agree. This is the new forecast, the more realistic one. Took out $1.1 billion. I personally think things may be a little tougher than that. But let's just agree that that new forecast is much closer to reality. On that new forecast, if I had signed that budget, we not only would have wiped out all the reserves the state still has. Indiana is one of the few states that has some reserves, has a savings account. But we also would have been spending $600 to $700 million anyway, more than we're taking in. It would have been an impossible situation. The states, and there are now 30 or more of them, that have gotten in that position are doing terrible things. They are cutting education, and I don't mean by a little. I'm talking about 13% in Alabama, 12% in New York, 16% in California. They're letting prisoners out of jail over. I just came from Plymouth, where I informed them that California has let out twice the population of Plymouth in prisoners who should not be on the streets, but they can't afford to keep behind bars anymore. And by now, 30 states have raised taxes, which I think is the worst thing you can do when people are struggling to make ends meet. And the worst thing you can do if you want to come out of a recession. You want businesses to come in and invest. But I want to end on a note of optimism. This problem can be dealt with, and I think it will be. I'll be resubmitting a budget. It'll look a lot like the one I gave the legislature in January. They added $1 billion to that budget in their work. We can't afford it, and now they know it. And I'm very optimistic that we will be able to keep Indiana in a place where vital services are protected and where taxes and taxpayers are protected. One other thing, then I'll take your questions. I want to endorse wholeheartedly Senator Long's decision, which I believe he announced while I was traveling today, that the Senate will consider only one bill, which is to say the budget bill and concentrate its efforts on that, and that gambling is off the table. Any issues related to gambling can go to summer study committees and be examined in the daylight, not in the frenzy and the chaos of late night sessions that are really about something else. I think he's exactly right about that, and I think that will really improve the chances that we have an orderly special session and a successful one. So I want to thank him for it. Class dismissed. Ben.
Governor, does the one bill, budget bill, does that include something for the Indianapolis CIB issue?
It will, as I've said before. And by the way, it belongs in the budget. This is a state budget issue. People in Fort Wayne, for instance, should know that the Indianapolis Convention business is a huge winner for the state. It is a profit center for the state. If we make a mess of that, there will be less money to spend, a lot less money to spend in Fort Wayne and everywhere else. So, yes, we've been working on this. We put this thing under a microscope, and I will make a proposal. By the way, I believe this problem is very solvable, probably more so than it looked a month ago, and I'll explain why next week. But people here should root for that problem to get solved, because the income taxes and sales taxes and others that come to the state and can be used in every other part of Indiana is a big net plus, and it would be really foolish and harmful to state for every part of Indiana if we were to let that erode and collapse.
We're interested in doing some one-on-one, so we're going to
yeah.
ask a lot of questions, but we don't have a mic up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Anybody else?
Just a question. The budget that you will submit will be balanced approximately with what the forecast is, correct? So,
I have not ruled out using some of our reserves in order to bring this together, but if so, it'll be a very small amount. Because if you think back to the month-on-month slide, we haven't seen a bottom to this yet, and no one so far can tell me on what date the recession will end and how quickly we'll recover. Remember, we lost $1.1 billion just since the summer. So the reserves, the surplus, is the last line of defense between us and terrible cuts in services and tax increases. And we should be very glad that we're one of the states that still has a savings account. And I'm going to try to defend it.
so then the legislature, if they're going to add in one area, they really do need to take away somewhere else, right?
That's a great idea. No, and thank you. But it also underscores something else. As I proposed in January, I want to leave lots of room for the legislature to work its will. I'm just trying to establish some boundaries. No tax cuts, no raiding of pension funds, and the protection of some defined amount of reserves. Now, I'll lay out my suggestions within that for the spending of that $13 or so billion. But if the I expect and I welcome the legislature saying, no, less of that, more of that. All they can't do is what they were headed for doing a month ago, and that's add $1 billion and put us in the ring. Clear?
How confident are you that a budget can be done in 2 weeks, and what happens July 1st if it's not there?
I'm confident. There's absolutely no reason we can't do this. Again, this isn't easy, but we are not against the wall as other states are. There'd be no excuse for not doing it, and I think the legislators I'm talking to are acutely aware that the state will be watching and expecting them to get their job done. So I feel very good about it.